So I'm frequently asked for book recommendations that are modern retellings of classical myths. So authors who have taken Greek or Roman myths and written versions for the modern era, whether they are still set in antiquity or have been transposed into the modern day. And I am finally here to do a video dedicated to that topic. If, however, you are also looking for somewhere to read the original ancient Greek and Roman myths, I have an entire video dedicated to that topic, so I will link that down below. So let's start off with the series of books that was my entryway into retellings of ancient Greek and Roman myths. This is the Canongate Myth series. Now, you've heard me talk frequently, I'm sure, about Margaret Atwood's The Penelopiad. This is Margaret Atwood's version of Homer's Odyssey, essentially. It's a retelling of that story from Penelope's perspective, who was Odysseus's wife and remains at home whilst he's away at the Trojan War and then on his journey back home to Ithaca. I read this book around age 15 or 16 and it really got me into this genre of literature. There are, however, other books in this series. The Canongate Myth series itself had different authors write retellings of different myths from different cultures. So there's Celtic, there's Russian, and there's Greek, Roman, etc, etc. I'm only going to tell you about the Greek and Roman ones though for now. So there is also Girl Meets Boy by Ali Smith, which is a retelling of a specific myth from Ovid's Metamorphosis. A little bit different to Margaret Atwood's Penelopiad, however, it takes more inspiration from the themes of this story and is set in modern day Scotland. The myth itself is the myth of Iphis, which is a story in which characters change gender. Iphis is born a girl, raised a boy, and falls in love with another girl, and to be with this other woman is given the gift of becoming a real boy by the gods, essentially. So Girl Meets Boy plays with gender and sexuality in a modern day setting, taking inspiration from this ancient myth. Jeanette Winterson too wrote a book for this series, and that is Wait, which is a retelling of the Greek myth of Atlas, and it is essentially after Atlas has been condemned by Zeus to hold the weight of the world on his shoulder, about his experience standing there, observing the world, carrying this weight, and the conversations he has with characters like Heracles who come along and ask for his assistance. So another one predominantly grounded in antiquity. Then we have The Helmet of Horror by Victor Pellavin, which is a retelling of the Greek myth of Theseus and the Minotaur, but set once more in the modern day, telling that famous myth of Theseus and the Minotaur through the form of internet chat rooms. We then have Michelle Faber's The Fire Gospel, which is a retelling of the Greek myth of Prometheus. It follows Theo, who is in fact a modern day scholar of antiquity, who discovers a fifth gospel to the Christian Bible, and when he unleashes this on the world, it has a similar effect to Prometheus's gift of fire to the world, with repercussions that were not expected. And lastly, Where Three Roads Meet by Sally Vickers follows Sigmund Freud in the 1930s in London, as well as taking partially part in ancient Greece, whilst he explores his infamous Oedipus complex, and this book is inspired by the myth of Oedipus. Now, this leads me on away from the Canongate Myth series to a recent addition of Greek and Roman myth retellings to The Children of Jocasta by Natalie Haynes. I read this very recently, and it is a retelling of the Greek myth of Oedipus, told by two different narrators, one Jocasta, Oedipus's mother and wife, and their youngest daughter after the death of both of her parents. So we get the story from Jocasta's childhood through her growing up, meeting Oedipus, having children, the climax of the original myth, and afterwards through the lives of their children and what happens after both their parents are gone. Another one set entirely in antiquity is Cassandra by Christa Wolf. This was originally written in German, and this is a retelling of the myth of Cassandra, who was a Greek seer. She was one of the sisters of Paris and Hector, princes of Troy, and was captured by Agamemnon during the Trojan War, and enslaved by him and taken home after the Trojan War is over. She is famous for being a seer who not only possesses the gift of being a seer, but is cursed so that nobody will ever believe her predictions. So she's cursed to always know the future, but to never be believed. Similarly, Christa Wolf has also written a retelling of the Greek myth of Medea, possibly one of the most infamous women of Greek mythology, who is best known for killing her own children. And if Medea is somebody you're interested in, there's also a retelling of the myth of Medea written by Liz Lochhead in the form of a play, Liz Lochhead being a famous Scottish playwright. A recent myth retelling that I've picked up is Strange Heart Beating by Ellie Goldstone. This is set in the modern day and it's about a young woman who is capsized in a boat by a swan, and is of course inspired by the Greek myth of Leda and the swan. Leda being a young woman who was sexually assaulted by Zeus in the form of a swan, and is then often depicted as laying an egg which birthed Helen of Troy, the most beautiful woman ever known to man. But I also have to mention a book that isn't a novel but in fact a collection of poetry, and that is Hold Your Own by Kate Tempest. This book is inspired by the Greek myth of Tiresias, who was a prophet who lived both as a man and a woman, and then was asked by Zeus and Hera to answer a debate they were having in who experienced more pleasure from sex, because he had this unique perspective of having lived as both a man and a woman. In this collection of poetry, Kate Tempest takes inspiration from that myth and writes a series of poems exploring gender, sexuality and relationships, as well as aging and finding oneself, and to different degrees do they follow the plot of the original myth. There's also a book that you may very well have heard of as it's quite famous, and that is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and this is a retelling of some of the events of the Trojan War from Greek mythology, specifically the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus, who are often perceived as having been lovers in the ancient Greek myths, and Madeline Miller really brings that vision to life in her retelling. But I think that's enough to be getting on with for now. All of the books I've mentioned are, as you've seen, direct retellings of specific myths. So I hope you've found something to pique your interest in this video. Do let me know if you have any other books you would recommend on this topic. I would love to hear about them, as I am sure would many of the other people watching this video. Oh, and whilst I'm here, I will also say a few of you have been letting me know that you haven't been seeing my videos popping up in your subscription box, which is incredibly annoying. This happens to me too with some of the people I'm subscribed to. It's the YouTube algorithms and it's really annoying. But if you're not already aware, although I'm sure many of you are as other creators have pointed this out, there is a little bell button down beneath this video next to my username, which you can click and you will get notifications every time I upload a new video. So if that's of interest to you, I thought I would let you know, just in case. It's something I've done with a lot of channels just because it is the easiest way to keep a track of everything. But until next time guys, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye!